Hello and welcome to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Kathryn Feltner in our Washington, D.C. studio. It is truly good to have you here with us. His name is Charlie Gard, and at 11 months, Charlie is at the center of an international conversation on the right to life, with both Pope Francis and President Donald Trump stepping in. Baby Charlie suffers from a rare genetic condition and is unable to breathe unaided. His parents have raised nearly $2 million to bring him to the U.S. for an experimental treatment. But last week, the Guards lost a legal battle as the courts ruled Charlie will be pulled from life support. It's a move that goes against the parents' very vocal wishes.
If he's still fighting, we're still fighting. And he's still fighting over there, believe me, he's still fighting. He's a little fighter, he's a little trooper, and he's a soldier. He will fight, and he'd fight to the very end, and he's still fighting, but we're not allowed to fight for him anymore.
On Monday, U.S. President Donald Trump got involved, tweeting, "If we can help little Charlie Gard, as per our friends in the UK and the Pope, we would be delighted to do so." Pope Francis and the Vatican have been outspoken defenders of Charlie's life and of his parents' rights. Vatican Pediatric Hospital Bambino Gesù offered this week to transfer Charlie to its facilities, but the London hospital where Charlie is living refused the transfer. And a statement issued by the Vatican spokesman last Sunday underlines Pope Francis's support, declaring, "The Holy Father follows with affection and emotion the story of Charlie Gard and expresses his own closeness to his parents." These gestures came shortly after a statement from the Pontifical Academy for Life, which drew criticism for allegedly not showing solidarity with the family. The Academy's president, Archbishop Vincenzo Paglia, saying, "We must also accept the limits of medicine and avoid aggressive medical procedures that are disproportionate to any expected results or excessively burdensome to the patient or the family." Dr. John Haas is president of the National Catholic Bioethics Center and a member of the Pontifical Academy for Life. He joins us now from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Dr. Haas, thank you for your time.
Sure, Kathryn, it's a pleasure to be with you.
The European Court of Human Rights says the hospital can withdraw life support because it was likely that Charlie would suffer significant harm if his present suffering was prolonged without any realistic prospect of improvement, and the experimental therapy would be of no effective benefit. Dr. Haas, what's your response as a moral theologian and expert in bioethics to the court's conclusion?
Well, I don't think the court is in the position to be making that judgment. That judgment should be made by the parents of the child, not a court.
One question in regards to this case that keeps getting brought up over and over again is the topic of extraordinary means versus ordinary means of keeping a child alive. Ordinary meaning preserving life, extraordinary prolonging a life. Do you believe Charlie's parents are taking extraordinary means in keeping their child alive?
The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops have issued something called the Ethical and Religious Directives for Catholic Healthcare Services. And they deal with what may or may not be done within Catholic healthcare institutions to conform with the moral law. And there are actually two directives that deal specifically with this issue, and they define it quite clearly and succinctly, if I could read those.
Please do.
Okay, it's Directive 56 and Directive 57. Directive 56 reads, "A person has a moral obligation to use ordinary or proportionate means of preserving his or her life," and then it defines them as proportionate means are those that, in the judgment of the patient, offer a reasonable hope of benefit and do not entail an excessive burden or impose excessive expense on the family or the community. So the bishops, speaking out of the Catholic moral tradition, say that we have a moral obligation to use an intervention that offers a reasonable hope of benefit and that does not entail an excessive burden in the judgment of the patient. Now, you brought up also extraordinary, and Directive 57 deals with that. A person may forego extraordinary or disproportionate means of preserving life. Then the bishops define what this means. Disproportionate means are those that, in the patient's judgment, do not offer a reasonable hope of benefit or entail an excessive burden or impose excessive expense on the family or the community. Now, in this case, this very sad situation where a child is dying from an inherited genetic disorder, which cannot be cured. So the interventions really offer no reasonable hope of benefit to the child. and may indeed be imposing an excessive burden. Now, because the means are termed extraordinary, that is, there's no moral obligation to use them, but that does not mean that there would be a moral obligation to stop using them. So if it's an extraordinary or disproportionate means, the patient decides whether or not those interventions should continue. And in this case, since little Charlie can't, well, in this case, that's right, the baby can't make these judgments, so the proxy decision makers for the baby are the parents, and so it should be the parents making this judgment and this determination, not the courts, not the hospital, the parents.
Dr. Haas, you were, as of a few weeks ago, appointed to the Pontifical Academy for Life. The Vatican has issued a statement in support of Charlie's parents. The Vatican Hospital has offered to take Charlie in, but the original statement from the Pontifical Academy for Life received pushback. Archbishop Poglia, the head of the council, saying aggressive medical procedures that are disproportionate to any expected results or excessively burdensome to the patient or the family must be avoided. What do you think Archbishop Poglia meant by that, and is it something you agree with?
Well, I mean, I think he was speaking in terms of the directives, the two directives that I just read. There's no moral obligation to use excessive means that offer no reasonable hope of benefit. There's no requirement to use them. One may forego them because we know that we're not born for this life anyway. We're born for the life to come. But this means that one may choose to go ahead and use these extraordinary means if that decision is made on the part of the patient or on the part of the patient's proxies. In 1980, the Holy See issued a declaration on euthanasia, and it addresses this situation as well. It says that you are not required to use disproportionate means, but it does go on to say, if there are no other sufficient remedies, it is permitted, with the patient's consent, to have recourse to the means provided by the most advanced medical techniques, even if these means are still at the experimental stage and are not without a certain risk. And as I understand the news reports, the parents wanted to take their child, bring the child to the United States to undergo an experimental intervention that might be for the child's benefit. But again, the courts refused to allow them to do that. And as far as I know, the courts have even refused to allow the parents to take their child home to die, which I really don't understand.
Dr. John Haas, president of the National Catholic Bioethics Center, thank you for your insight on this and for your time.
I was glad to be with you. Thank you, Kathryn.
For a continued analysis of the Charlie Gard case, we're joined now by Mallory Quigley, the communications director for the Susan B. Anthony List. Mallory, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kathryn.
This story is capturing the world's attention. What are you, as a leader in the U.S. pro-life movement, closely following here? What strikes you?
Sure. Well, I have been watching this story with great concern and compassion for Charlie and for his family. It's reminded me a little bit about Congresswoman Jamie Herrera Butler's story. If you remember, she's a U.S. Congresswoman. Her and her husband were given a prenatal diagnosis. Their daughter, Abigail, had Potter syndrome, which is typically considered fatal, and they were encouraged to abort their baby. But they chose life, and they sought an extraordinary new experimental treatment here in the United States at Johns Hopkins University. And what do we have now? Not only is Abigail healthy, alive and well, but we have a treatment now for Potter syndrome that future children and their parents can benefit from. And I think that, you know, we cannot cure these maladies without patients. If we're going to kill patients before we treat them, we'll never have sound medical advances. And so that's one thing I've been thinking. You know, Wesley J. Smith, who's a writer for Charlotte Lozier Institute,
and also will be on this show later on.
Oh, incredible! Well, he has a wonderful piece on First Things, addressing this concept of what is fetal care, so-called fetal care. And I think any time that we are making judgments about what lives are worth living and what lives aren't, that we need to be extremely cautious. And there's a lot of parallels here between baby Charlie's story and babies that are being diagnosed in the womb with fetal abnormalities.
President Donald Trump is getting involved in this. He's tweeted about it. Members of his administration have spoken to the Gard's family. What do you make of that gesture?
Well, I thought it was a very diplomatic gesture and very encouraging to see the president reach out and say that the United States stands ready to help. I think that members of his administration have been in touch with the family in conversations facilitated by the British government. I hope that more comes of this. It's wonderful to see President Trump, but also Pope Francis, really pricking the conscience of us as a world. How do we as a people respond to the most vulnerable of our species?
Thank you, Mallory, and I want to get your take on this next story. Here in the United States, senators continue to negotiate parts of a health care bill which would repeal and replace former President Barack Obama's Affordable Care Act. With the Senate vote pushed until after the July 4th recess, pro-life leaders are closely monitoring any updates to make sure pro-life protections remain in place. The House of Representatives passed a health care bill in May with two major pro-life protections. It stops tax dollars from going to health insurance plans that cover abortion. And second, it defunds Planned Parenthood of more than $400 million tax dollars. The Senate version of the health care bill has pro-life protections, but the senators are under immense pressure to cave on these provisions. Mallory, what's the latest? Is there any hope these pro-life protections will remain?
We are in a bit of a holding pattern right now. As you said, the draft does have the two provisions, but we are very concerned as a pro-life movement that either the defunding Planned Parenthood or the Hyde protections could come out as a result of either procedural challenges from the parliamentarian or political concerns, because obviously there's not enough votes at this point to pass the legislation, or else we would have had the vote last week. So we do believe that our pro-life allies are very committed to keeping both of these provisions in the bill, but pro-life senators need to hear daily from the viewers and from the pro-life community nationwide to make sure that these two things stay in.
That's a role we can play. Mallory Quigley, Susan B. Anthony List, thank you.
My pleasure.
As the U.S. Senate continues to negotiate their health care bill, pro-lifers must make their voices heard. The House of Representatives passed a health care bill in May that does two important things. First, it stops American tax dollars from going to health insurance plans that cover abortion. And second, it defunds Planned Parenthood of more than $400 million of our tax dollars. Now the Senate must pass a health care bill that does both of these things. Because Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry are putting immense pressure on wavering senators, it is urgent both of your U.S. senators hear from you right now. For this week's call to action, go to prolifeweekly.com. Once you type in the web address into your internet browser, you will type in your name and personal information, so the message is personalized for your senators. Then click submit. That's it. It's that simple. Take this action and you will add your name to the petition that tells the U.S. Senate to stop using our tax dollars for abortion in the health care bill. It is up to each of us as defenders of life to make our voices heard during this urgent time. Once again, sign the petition at prolifeweekly.com and share this call to action with your friends and neighbors and fellow defenders of life. Turning now to more news, Ireland is on the pro-life international radar this week in a major way. Ireland's annual Rally for Life in Dublin drew some 70,000 marchers this past Saturday. Prominent pro-life groups, including the Life Institute, Youth Defence, and the Northern Ireland group Precious Life, teamed up to organize the event and call for the protection of the endangered 8th Amendment to the Constitution, which protects the right to life of the unborn. The Irish government is considering a repeal of the 8th Amendment. The rally took place all in the midst of new British legislation announced last week and put into motion by Parliament member Stella Creasy, who called for the UK government to fund abortions for Northern Irish women at no cost in England and Wales. Hundreds of doctors at the British Medical Association's annual conference voted to change a 1967 law that criminalizes abortion outside specific guidelines. The doctors' union said last week that abortions should not be considered a criminal offense and called for them to be regulated in the same way as other health procedures. Pro-lifers protested outside the meeting. The director of the Catholic Parliamentary Office, Anthony Horan, commented on the vote, saying, "To build a more just world, we need to ensure that every individual is afforded the right to life. This means a world free of abortion." The latest numbers indicate 34% of all U.S. abortions are performed on women between the ages of 20 to 24. One of the top reasons women give for getting an abortion was their belief that having a baby would interfere with work, the ability to care for dependents, or school. This raises the question, what are Christian schools doing to curb these numbers? How can universities be more life-affirming so women choose both life and education? Dr. Jenna Ellis joins us now. She is Assistant Professor of Legal Studies and Communication at Colorado Christian University. Jenna, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So how does your college, Colorado Christian University, support students who are pregnant?
We actually really support students who are, and we have our College of Adult and Graduate Studies, as well as our undergraduate campus. And so the College of Adult and Graduate Studies actually is for the non-traditional student, and that may include working mothers, it may include younger mothers, and that's specifically designed so that students can finish their course of study through either online or remote campuses, and that's really designed to facilitate anyone from all walks of life.
Offer that flexibility.
Yes.
Now, for Christian schools, when a student is pregnant, it likely may be the case that they're not married, that student. So we saw a case of this recently. Maddie Runkles, 18 years old, got pregnant at her Christian high school. How, in your opinion, should Christian schools respond to pregnant students without promoting premarital sex?
Yeah, one of the things that Colorado Christian University takes very seriously is our commitment to our faith, which does include the pro-life perspective. And so one of the things that I so appreciate about being at our campus is that because we're smaller, we have about 1,400 students, only 47 full-time faculty, we really get to know our students and care about their holistic well-being and their faith, not just their courses. And so if students come to professors or to administration with any kind of life issue or faith crisis or whatever they're going through, we really take the time to mentor them, to coach them, to encourage them, and give them the best options and encourage them in the faith, which of course would include promoting the pro-life perspective.
Jenna, you are a practicing attorney. Make the argument as to why Christian schools should support pregnant students.
Yes, and the pro-life, of course, message is one that everyone should hold very sincerely, because we know through just looking at the science that's out there that life does begin at conception. But one of the things that I find so wonderful about our U.S. Constitution is that our founders actually wrote that term, that they ordained and established it for ourselves and our posterity. That legal term, posterity, is actually the future generation. So the people, the men and women who haven't even been born yet as of 1787 when the Constitution was ratified. And so to acknowledge that there are unalienable rights endowed by our Creator God specifically for our posterity is acknowledging the right of the unborn right there in the text of our Constitution. And so even though we can make the pro-life argument at any time and place in history, I think it's so amazing to live in an American society that actually our founding legal documents specifically recognize pro-life.
Well, thank you for your perspective, Dr. Jenna Ellis from Colorado Christian University.
Thank you.
When we come back,
when you decide you're going to start killing the elderly, killing the disabled, killing the mentally ill, killing people with cancer, you're creating a disposable caste, a killable caste of people.
Catholic bioethics expert Wesley J. Smith takes a seat with us and paints the landscape of our culture today. Stay tuned as EWTN Pro-Life Weekly continues after this break. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Kathryn Feltner. A new Netflix series features a predominantly female cast and a misleading scene on abortion.
I feel like I'm supposed to ask you if this is what you want. I mean, as your husband.
Yeah. It's not the right time. Not the right baby.
Ruth is the main character in the new show Glow. Played by actress Allison Brie, Ruth gets an abortion in episode 8 after finding out she's pregnant following an affair. Glow is about the personal and professional lives of 1980s women who perform in a wrestling organization. The next time viewers see Ruth, she's back in the wrestling match as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't undergone a major operation, as if an abortion hadn't just taken the life of her unborn baby, a baby she deems not the right baby. The characterization that there are no consequences is a misleading one that the abortion industry wants you to buy, but it's not true. Also concerning here is the role the man plays. As Ruth sits in the abortion clinic, her husband jokes about getting her a donut afterwards. Where's the support? Where is the unconditional love offering her a way out? The scene is a major juxtaposition to another show on Netflix, The Ranch, where another recent abortion clinic scene turned out very differently because a man, portrayed by actor Ashton Kutcher, stepped up to the plate.
You want to leave?
Yeah, I do.
Both Glow and The Ranch are given the adult mature rating. Both contain vulgarities, and both Netflix series recently released these scenes in abortion clinics, but the end results were much different. Let us speak out anytime Hollywood wants to glamorize abortion under the false premise of it being pro-woman, and applaud when media portrays how freeing saying yes to life can be. Remember, you have a role in countering today's culture of death. Follow this week's call to action. Go to prolifeweekly.com and tell your U.S. senators to keep the pro-life protections in American healthcare. As we are reminded in the Charlie Gard case, the threats to equality of human life have accelerated in recent years in our courts and in our hospitals. This week, we introduce you to a man who's been documenting and clearly speaking out on these threats for years. Wesley J. Smith is a lawyer, a Catholic bioethics expert, in this week's Pro-Life Focus. Wesley J. Smith, thanks for taking the time to sit down with us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
You write and talk a lot about the culture of death in our world today. What do you mean by that?
That's a pretty big topic, but what in a real nutshell I think it means, and I believe it was coined by Pope John Paul II, but it means that as a society we are beginning to look at the intentional ending of human life as a means of solving problems. It could be assisted suicide, a means of solving the problem of human suffering. So we're getting to a place where eliminating suffering is becoming the purpose of society, and then that morphs very quickly into eliminating the sufferer. It may be a woman who has a pregnancy that is not wanted, and the solution is to terminate that pregnancy. And of course, it just moves into other areas as well. And the problem with it isn't only that people are losing their lives as a consequence, but we are losing the concept of human exceptionalism, the idea that being human being matters morally simply and merely because we are human. And that reduces the view of Western civilization, that we each have equal moral worth, that a human being's life is incalculable. And it is, I think, an attack on Western civilization, not intended to be, but it undermines Thomas Jefferson writing, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness."
You've also written what you call the slippery slope from assisted suicide, which you've mentioned, to legalized murder. For critics who say that's being dramatic, what's your response?
Well, it's facts on the ground. First off, when I went to law school, somebody could not consent to their murder. And euthanasia is allowing people to ask to be murdered because they are being lethally injected for reasons of the patient's desire to eliminate their own suffering, or because they're in despair, or what it might be. In some countries, like the Netherlands, you're having mentally ill people euthanized. Belgium not only euthanizes mentally ill people, but then conjoins it with organ harvesting if the patient approved it beforehand. I can't think of anything more dangerous to a society and to individuals who are despairing and suffering through the night than to say your deaths have greater value than your lives. One thing more dangerous if a society comes to believe it. In Belgium, you have even healthy elderly couples have received joint euthanasia in order to, because they wanted to avoid the future suffering of the grief of loss of a spouse.
Of loneliness.
That's right, the future fear of it. And in one case, the death doctor, as I call them, was procured by the couple's son, who said, well, this was the only choice we had because I would not have been able to care for them. So when you decide you're going to start killing the elderly, killing the disabled, killing the mentally ill, killing people with cancer, you're creating a disposable caste, a killable caste of people. And here in the United States, where we do not allow lethal injection, euthanasia, but 5 states, or 6 states, when you include Washington, D.C., which is not technically a state, allow assisted suicide, where doctors are allowed to prescribe poison for patients to take if they have a terminal illness. You're saying, well, okay, if you want to kill yourself, and let's say you're doing it because your business had collapsed or your children had died, we're going to give you suicide prevention. Oh, I have cancer. Well, in that case, here are your pills. You're telling the cancer patient, you're telling the person who may be worried about being a burden, and this is why people are committing assisted suicide, not pain, existential fear. They're worried about being a burden. They're worried about not being able to engage in enjoyable activities, or they're worried about losing dignity. When you say, as a doctor or as a family member saying, yes, of course, Mom, that's your choice. When you say that, you are confirming those people's worst fears about themselves, that they are not as worthy of being loved, that their life isn't worth living, that they are a burden, and it is a form of abandonment, and it is to treat people unequally based on illness.
Finally, do you have any advice for our viewers on how they can best engage in the culture?
Participate in caring for people when they're an extremist. I've been a hospice volunteer. I can't tell you how important that was in my life, just to be with people and families who are going through this. We are a death-fearing culture. And for Catholics who watch EWTN, that it seems to me, is not the way to go. Right. You should embrace the person suffering. You should embrace families in need. Catholics should never allow, dioceses should never allow anybody in their area to die alone. Reach out to people. Let them know they're important. Let them know they'll get the kind of care that they need. Make sure they're not isolated. And a lot of people will say, you know, I don't want those poison pills. Life is worth living to the very end.
Wesley J. Smith, thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
That's it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. You can reach us anytime at prolifeweekly@ewtn.com. It's always great to hear from you. I look forward to seeing you again next week from our Orange County, California studio. Life is a gift. God bless.